The starship Resolute moved slowly through the darkness of space. It was not the biggest ship in the human fleet, but it was fast and strong. Captain Diane Crawford stood on the bridge and watched the stars pass by on the main screen. She had been a captain for 15 years, and she had seen many strange things in space, but today would be different from anything she had ever experienced. "Captain, we are approaching the meeting point," said Lieutenant Commander Paul Hartley. He was a tall man with gray hair and kind eyes. He had served with Crawford for 10 years, and she trusted him completely. "Good," Crawford said. "Tell the crew to prepare for first contact. I want everyone in their best uniforms. We need to make a good impression." The Resolute was on a diplomatic mission. 3 months ago, humanity had received a message from an alien species called the Velkari. They ruled a vast empire that covered hundreds of star systems. They wanted to meet the humans and discuss the future. Earth Command had sent the Resolute to represent all of humanity. Down in the engine room, a young man named Lucas Grant was checking the power systems. He was only 19 years old, the youngest crew member on the ship. Lucas had graduated from the academy 2 years early because he was extremely intelligent. He could fix almost any machine, and he understood technology better than engineers twice his age. "Lucas, are you nervous?" asked Chief Engineer Marcus Webb. He was a large man with dark skin and a friendly smile. Lucas looked up from his work. "A little bit," he admitted. "I have never seen an alien before. What if they do not like us?" Marcus laughed. "Then we will make them like us. That's what humans do." 1 hour later, the Resolute arrived at the meeting point. What they saw made everyone stop breathing for a moment. The Velkari flagship was enormous. It was at least 20 times bigger than the Resolute, and it did not look like any ship the humans had ever seen. It looked alive. The hull seemed to move and breathe, like the skin of some massive creature. "My God," whispered Dr. Nina Vance, the ship's medical officer. She was a small woman with red hair and sharp eyes. "That ship is organic. It is actually a living thing." Around the flagship, hundreds of smaller Velkari ships waited in formation. The human ship was completely surrounded. If something went wrong, there would be no escape. Captain Crawford straightened her uniform. "Let us go meet our new friends," she said calmly. "Paul, Nina, Lucas, you are coming with me. Marcus, you stay here and keep the ship ready." "Why me?" Lucas asked, surprised that the captain had chosen him. "Because you are young," Crawford said. "The Velkari have lived for thousands of years. I want them to see that even our youngest people are capable and brave." The shuttle carried them across the space between the two ships. As they entered the Velkari flagship, Lucas felt his heart beating fast. The inside of the ship was warm and wet, like the inside of a living body. Strange lights glowed from the walls, and the floor was soft under their feet. Velkari guards led them through long corridors. The aliens were tall and thin, with hard shells covering their bodies like armor. They had 4 arms and 2 legs, and their heads were triangular, with large, multifaceted eyes. They moved with quick, sharp movements that reminded Lucas of insects. Finally, they entered a massive chamber. At the far end, sitting on a throne made of something that looked like bone, was Queen Thalvera. She was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Her shell was deep purple, decorated with gold markings that showed her royal status. Her eyes reflected light like diamonds, and when she moved, Lucas could hear the clicking of her natural armor. She was ancient. Something in her presence made Lucas feel very small and very young. "Humans," the queen said. Her voice was like many voices speaking at once. "You are smaller than I expected, and softer. How do you survive in this universe with such weak bodies?" Captain Crawford stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we survive because we work together. We protect each other. We are grateful for this opportunity to meet your people." The queen made a sound that might have been laughter. "Grateful, Yes, you should be grateful. The Valkyrie Empire has existed for 50,000 years. Your species has only been traveling between stars for 300 years. You are children, playing in a garden full of monsters. The queen rose from her throne and walked closer to the humans. Her guards moved with her, their weapons ready. She looked at each human carefully, studying them like specimens in a laboratory. Then her eyes found Lucas. She stopped moving. Her multifaceted eyes locked onto him with sudden intensity. Something changed in her expression. Lucas felt a cold wave of fear wash through his body as the alien queen stared at him. "This one," Falvera said. "This young one. There is something different about him." "He is Ensign Lucas Grant," Captain Crawford said carefully. "Our engineering specialist." The queen moved closer to Lucas. She was so close that he could smell her strange alien scent. She reached out one clawed hand and touched his face gently. Lucas forced himself not to move or show fear. "Yes," the queen whispered. "His neural patterns, his genetic structure. He is compatible. He is perfect." "Compatible for what?" Paul Hartley asked, stepping forward protectively. Queen Thalvera turned to face the humans. Her voice became cold and commanding. "This young human will remain here as tribute to the Valkyrie Empire. He belongs to me now." The words hit Lucas like a physical blow. He could not believe what he was hearing. "Absolutely not," Captain Crawford said immediately. "He is a member of my crew. He is not property to be given away." The queen's eyes narrowed dangerously. "You do not understand, human. This is not a request. This is a command. Your tiny ship is surrounded by my fleet. You have two choices. Give me the boy, or watch everyone on your ship die." The Valkyrie guards raised their weapons. Lucas counted at least 50 of them in the chamber, and there were probably thousands more throughout the ship. Captain Crawford did not move. She did not show any fear. She looked directly into the queen's alien eyes and spoke clearly. "No." The chamber became completely silent. The queen seemed unable to believe what she had just heard. No species had ever refused her demands. No one had ever dared to say no to the ruler of the Valkyrie Empire. "You would die for this one boy?" the queen asked. "We would die for any of our people," Crawford answered. "That is what makes us human." The queen stared at her for a long moment. Then she made that strange laughing sound again. "Interesting," she said. "Very interesting. You have 12 hours to change your mind, Captain. After that, I will take what I want, and your ship will burn." The guards escorted the humans back to their shuttle. As they flew back to the Resolute, Lucas sat in silence, his hands shaking. The queen wanted him. And in 12 hours, his captain would have to choose between his life and the lives of everyone else. The meeting room on the Resolute was filled with tense silence. Every senior officer sat around the table, their faces pale and worried. On the main screen, Admiral Catherine Cole looked at them from Earth Command Headquarters, millions of miles away. "Let me understand this correctly," the Admiral said slowly. "The Valkyrie Queen wants one of your crew members as tribute, and you refused her?" "That is correct, Admiral," Captain Crawford replied. "Ensign Grant is not a bargaining chip. He is a human being." Admiral Cole sighed heavily. "Captain, I understand your feelings, but you need to think about the bigger picture. The Valkyrie Empire controls hundreds of systems. They have technology we cannot even understand. If we go to war with them, humanity could be destroyed." "So you want me to hand over a 19-year-old boy?" Crawford asked. Her voice was calm, but everyone could hear the anger beneath it. "I am saying we need to consider all options," the Admiral replied. "One life against billions. The mathematics is simple." Paul Hartley stood up from his chair. "With all due respect, Admiral, mathematics does not apply to human lives. The moment we start trading our people for safety, we stop being human. We become something else." Something worse. Lucas sat quietly in the corner of the room. He had not spoken since they returned from the Valkyrie ship. His mind was spinning with fear and confusion. Part of him wanted to volunteer to go. If his sacrifice could save the ship and prevent a war, maybe it was the right thing to do. Dr. Nina Vance noticed his expression. She walked over and sat down next to him. "Lucas," she said quietly, "I need to tell you something. I have been analyzing the data from our encounter with the Queen. I know why she wants you." "Why?" Lucas asked. Nina looked uncomfortable. The Valkyrie queens reproduce through a process called neural bonding. They need a mate with compatible brain patterns. It is extremely rare to find a compatible match. The Queen has probably been searching for centuries. So she wants me to be her mate? Lucas felt sick. More than that, Nina said gently. The bonding process would change you. Your mind would become connected to hers permanently. You would lose your identity, your memories, everything that makes you who you are. You would become a living extension of her will. Lucas felt the blood drain from his face. This was worse than he had imagined. The Queen did not just want him as a prisoner. She wanted to erase him completely. On the screen, Admiral Cole was still talking. "We could negotiate. Perhaps offer the Valkyrie something else of value. Technology, resources, territory." "They have technology beyond ours," Crawford interrupted. "They have more resources than we can imagine, and they do not want territory. They want Lucas specifically. There is nothing else we can offer them." The Admiral paused. "Then perhaps we should consider—" "No." Crawford's voice cut through like a blade. "I will not surrender a member of my crew to be used as a breeding tool by an alien queen. That is my final answer, Admiral. If Earth Command disagrees, they can find another captain." The screen went dark as the transmission ended. Everyone looked at Crawford with a mixture of respect and fear. "Captain," Lucas said, standing up on shaky legs, "maybe I should go, if it prevents a war." "Sit down, Lucas." Paul Hartley crossed the room and grabbed the young man by the shoulders. "Listen to me carefully. You are not a number in a calculation. You are not a tool to be traded. You are one of us, and we do not leave our people behind. Ever. But the whole crew could die because of me," Lucas whispered. "Then we die together," Crawford said firmly. "That is the human way. We stand for each other, or we stand for nothing." Marcus Webb, who had been quiet the whole time, suddenly spoke up. "Captain, maybe we do not have to die. I've been thinking about the Valkyrie ships. They are organic, they are alive, and living things can be hurt." Everyone turned to look at him. "What do you mean?" Crawford asked. "Their technology is based on biology," Marcus explained. "It is completely different from ours. I think we might be able to disrupt it. If we modify our warp core to emit a specific energy pulse, we can shut down every organic system in range." "Like an EMP," Paul said, understanding dawning on his face. "But for living ships." "Exactly." Marcus looked at Lucas. "But I cannot do the calculations alone. The modifications are extremely complex. I need the best engineer on this ship. I need Lucas." For the first time since the meeting started, Lucas felt something other than fear. He felt useful. He stood straighter and looked at the chief engineer. "Tell me what you need," he said. "We have 11 hours, Marcus replied. "Let us get to work." While Lucas and Marcus worked in engineering, Captain Crawford made her own plans. She searched through the ship's cultural database, looking for any information about Valkyrie traditions. After 2 hours, she found something interesting. "Paul, look at this," she called her first officer over. "The Valkyrie have a tradition called the Challenge of Honor. Any species can invoke it. Instead of fighting a war, 2 champions fight one-on-one. The winner's demands must be accepted." "That is perfect," Paul said. "We could buy more time. But who would fight? The Valkyrie are stronger and faster than humans." "I will fight," Crawford said quietly. "Diane, you cannot be serious. Their warriors are 3 times your size. I am completely serious. Crawford looked at her oldest friend. If I challenge the Queen to an honor duel, she will have to accept. It is their law. That gives Lucas and Marcus time to finish their work. And if I win, she has to let Lucas go. And if you lose? Crawford smiled grimly. Then make sure the pulse is ready. She opened a communication channel to the Valkyrie flagship. The Queen's face appeared on screen, cold and curious. Have you come to surrender the boy? Thalvera asked. No, Crawford replied. I have come to invoke the challenge of honor. I demand the right to fight for my crew member, 1 champion against 1 champion, according to your ancient laws. Then her multifaceted eyes gleamed with what might have been amusement. You know our traditions, she said. Impressive for such a young species. Very well, Captain. I accept your challenge. My champion is Crixtall, who has never lost a fight in 300 years. If you defeat him, the boy goes free. If you lose, he belongs to me. Agreed, Crawford said. The battle will take place in 6 hours. I look forward to watching you die. The screen went dark. Paul Hartley stared at his captain with a mixture of horror and admiration. You are either the bravest person I have ever met, he said, or the craziest. Crawford laughed softly. Probably both. Now help me prepare. I have a fight to win. Captain Diane Crawford stood in front of a mirror in her quarters. She wore simple combat clothes, nothing heavy or restrictive. In a fight against a larger opponent, speed would be her only advantage. She stretched her muscles and practiced her breathing, trying to stay calm. There was a knock at her door. Come in, she said. Lucas Grant entered the room. He looked exhausted. He and Marcus had been working on the energy pulse for hours without rest. But there was something else in his eyes, something that looked like guilt. Captain, I wanted to talk to you, he said quietly. You should be in engineering, Crawford replied. The pulse needs to be ready. Marcus is finishing the final adjustments. I needed to see you before... Lucas stopped. He could not finish the sentence. Crawford turned to face him. Before I go fight an alien warrior who has never been defeated? Yes. I suppose that deserves a conversation. Why are you doing this? Lucas asked. You could die. You probably will die. And it is all because of me. Crawford sat down on her bed and motioned for Lucas to sit in the chair across from her. He sat down, his hands twisted together in his lap. Let me tell you something, Lucas, she said. When I was young, maybe a few years older than you, I served on a ship called the Horizon. We were exploring a new system when we found a colony that had been attacked by pirates. Most of the colonists were dead, but there were survivors hidden in the underground shelters. Children, mostly. She paused, remembering. The pirates came back. They wanted to finish the job. My captain at the time decided to retreat. He said it was not our mission to fight pirates. He said we did not have the firepower. He calculated the odds and decided those children were not worth the risk. What happened? Lucas asked. We left them. We ran away. And 2 days later, we received a distress signal. The pirates had found the shelters. Every single child was dead. Crawford's voice became hard. I swore that day that I would never abandon anyone again. Not for odds, not for mathematics, not for any reason. Lucas looked at his captain with new understanding. So this is not really about me. It is about all of us, Crawford said. It is about who we choose to be. The universe is cold and dark and full of creatures who see other beings as objects to be used. If humanity becomes like that, we are already dead. The only thing that separates us from the darkness is our choice to stand for each other. She stood up and picked up a small device from her desk. It looked like a simple glove. What is that? Lucas asked. A neural disruptor, Crawford said with a small smile. Dr. Vance built it for me. One touch at close range, and it will overload any nervous system, human or alien. It is technically against the rules of the honor duel, but I never said I would fight fair. You are cheating? I am surviving. There is a difference. She put on the glove and flexed her fingers. Now get back to engineering. Whatever happens in that arena, I need to know the pulse is ready. Lucas stood up. He wanted to say something more, but words seemed inadequate. Instead, he simply nodded and left. 1 hour later, Captain Crawford stood in the combat arena aboard the Valkyrie flagship. The space was circular, about 50 meters across, with walls made of the same organic material as the rest of the ship. Hundreds of Valkyrie filled the viewing galleries above, their multifaceted eyes all focused on the small human woman in the center. Queen Thalvera sat on a raised platform, watching with cold interest. Beside her, her champion waited. Crixtal was massive. He stood over 3 meters tall, with a shell that looked like black iron. His forearms ended in claws that could tear through metal. Scars covered his body, evidence of centuries of battles. He looked at Crawford the way a predator looks at prey. "Human," he said, his voice deep and rumbling. "You are brave, but foolish. I will try to make your death quick." "That is very kind of you," Crawford replied, "but I am not planning to die today." The Queen raised one arm. "Begin." Crixtal moved with terrifying speed. For such a large creature, he was incredibly fast. He crossed the arena in 3 steps, and swung one massive claw at Crawford's head. She ducked under the blow and rolled to the side. The claw hit the ground where she had been standing, leaving deep gouges in the organic floor. Crawford kept moving, staying low and fast, never letting the alien get a solid target. For the first few minutes, she only dodged. She studied how Crixtal moved, looking for patterns and weaknesses. He was strong and fast, but he was also confident. Too confident. He expected to win easily, and that made him careless. The alien lunged again. This time, Crawford did not dodge. She stepped inside his reach, too close for him to use his claws effectively, and drove her fist into a joint in his armor. The blow was precise, targeting a soft spot between the hard plates. Crixtal roared in pain and surprise. He swung his lower arms, catching Crawford in the side, and sending her flying across the arena. She hit the ground hard, pain exploding through her ribs, but she forced herself up immediately. Stopping meant dying. "You hurt me," Crixtal said, sounding almost impressed. "No one has hurt me in 50 years. "Then you have been fighting weak opponents," Crawford gasped, trying to breathe through the pain. The battle continued. Crawford took more hits than she gave. Her lip was cut and bleeding. Her ribs were probably cracked. One eye was swelling shut. But every time she fell, she got back up. Every time Crixtal thought he had won, she surprised him with another attack. The Valkyrie audience began to murmur. This was not what they expected. This small, soft human should have been dead in the first minute. Instead, she was still fighting, still moving, still refusing to surrender. Queen Thalvera leaned forward on her throne. Her eyes never left Crawford. There was something in her expression that might have been respect. Crawford knew she could not win through strength. She was too damaged, too tired. It was time to use her secret weapon. She stumbled deliberately, pretending to fall. Crixtal saw his chance and rushed forward to finish her. That was exactly what she wanted. As the alien reached for her, Crawford launched herself upward. She grabbed one of his lower arms and climbed his body like a ladder. Before he could react, she was at his head, her gloved hand pressed against the soft tissue beneath his jaw. "I am sorry," she whispered, and she activated the neural disruptor. Blue lightning crackled across Crixtal's body. He screamed, a sound unlike anything Crawford had ever heard. His nervous system overloaded completely, sending his muscles into spasms. He collapsed like a falling mountain, hitting the ground with a crash that shook the entire arena. But he was not conscious either. He would not wake up for hours. Captain Crawford stood over her fallen opponent, swaying on her feet, blood dripping from her wounds. She looked up at the Queen. "I win," she said simply. The arena was completely silent. No one moved, no one spoke. They had just witnessed something impossible. A human had defeated the greatest warrior in the Valkyrie Empire. Queen Thalvera rose slowly from her throne. Her eyes burned with fury. "You cheated," she hissed. "You used technology. The duel is void." "You never said technology was forbidden," Crawford replied. "It was understood. The result does not count." The Queen turned to her guards. "Destroy their ship. Take the boy by force. Kill anyone who resists." Crawford smiled to her bloody lips. The 12 hours were up. She tapped the communication device in her ear. Now. Aboard the Resolute, the warp core pulsed with strange energy. Lucas pressed the final button, and a wave of power expanded outward in all directions. The energy pulse hit the Valkyrie fleet like an invisible wave. It moved through space at incredible speed, touching every organic ship in range. The effect was immediate and devastating. Aboard the Valkyrie flagship, the lights flickered and died. The walls, which had been warm and alive, became cold and still. The ship's living systems began to fail one by one. Life support, navigation, weapons, everything that made the vessel function simply stopped working. Queen Thalvera felt her connection to the ship disappear. It was like losing a limb. She screamed in rage and confusion as emergency lights cast red shadows across the arena. "What have you done?" she shouted at Crawford. The captain smiled despite her pain. "We stopped your ships, all of them. Every organic system in range has been disabled." Through the viewing ports, the Valkyrie could see their fleet drifting helplessly. Ships that had been proud predators moments ago were now floating wreckage. Some were already beginning to fall toward the nearby moon, pulled by its gravity with no power to resist. The Queen turned to her guards. "Kill her! Kill all the humans!" But the guards hesitated. Their weapons were partially organic too. The pulse had damaged them, and without their ships, without their technology, the Valkyrie suddenly felt vulnerable for the first time in thousands of years. Crawford tapped her communicator again. "Paul, send the shuttle. I need immediate extraction." "Already on the way, Captain," Paul Hartley's voice replied. "Are you all right?" "I have been better, but I am alive." 5 minutes later, a human shuttle broke through the flagship's weakened hull and landed in the arena. Paul Hartley jumped out with a medical team. They grabbed Crawford and carried her aboard before the Valkyrie could react. As the shuttle escaped through the hole it had created, Crawford looked back at the chaos below. The Queen stood in the middle of her dying ship, surrounded by confused guards and flickering lights. For the first time, she looked small. The shuttle returned to the Resolute. Dr. Vance was waiting in the medical bay, already preparing to treat the captain's injuries. 3 broken ribs, severe bruising, possible internal bleeding, Vance said as she scanned Crawford's body. "You are lucky to be alive." "Lucky is not the word I would use," Crawford replied through clenched teeth. "Stubborn, maybe." Lucas ran into the medical bay, his face filled with relief and worry. "Captain, you made it!" "Thanks to your pulse, Lucas. It worked perfectly." Crawford reached out and squeezed his hand. "You saved us all." But their celebration was interrupted by an alarm. Paul Hartley's voice came over the ship's speakers. "Captain, we have a problem. The Valkyrie flagship is losing orbit. It is going to crash into the moon. And there are thousands of Valkyrie aboard, including larvae and non-combatants. Crawford closed her eyes. The pain from her injuries mixed with a different kind of pain. They had won. The Valkyrie could not hurt them anymore. The logical choice was to leave and let the enemy suffer the consequences of their aggression. But that was not who they were. "How many shuttles do we have?" she asked. 4 operational, Paul replied. "Launch all of them. Begin rescue operations immediately." There was silence on the communication line. Then Paul spoke again, his voice careful. "Captain, they tried to kill us. They wanted to take Lucas and start a war. Why should we save them?" "Because we can," Crawford said simply. "Because leaving them to die would make us no better than them. Because mercy is not weakness, it is strength." She struggled to sit up despite Vance's protests. "Send every shuttle. Send every person who can help. We have maybe 2 hours before that ship hits the surface. I want every Valkyrie off that vessel before it crashes." The crew of the Resolute did not hesitate. They launched every shuttle and began the most unlikely rescue mission in human history. Human medics boarded the dying Valkyrie flagship and started evacuating its crew. Human engineers helped repair emergency life support so the aliens could breathe. Human soldiers, who had been ready to fight minutes ago, now carried injured Valkyrie warriors to safety. The Valkyrie did not understand what was happening. Many of them tried to resist at first. They attacked the humans who were trying to save them. But the humans did not fight back. They simply continued working, dodging claws and ignoring threats. Medical technician Claire Simmons was one of the first humans aboard the flagship. She found a group of Valkyrie larvae, baby aliens who could not survive without temperature control. Their caretakers were injured and unconscious. Claire picked up the larvae carefully, wrapping them in thermal blankets from her medical kit. A wounded Valkyrie warrior saw her holding the babies and charged at her, claws ready to kill. "Wait," Claire shouted. "I am trying to help them." The warrior did not stop. He slashed at her, cutting her arm. Blood ran down to her elbow, soaking her sleeve. But Claire did not drop the larvae. She protected them with her body, while another human pulled the warrior away. "Get him to medical," Claire ordered, still holding the alien babies. "He is injured too. He is not thinking clearly." "He just attacked you," the other human protested. "And he is still a living being who needs help. Now move." Throughout the flagship, similar scenes repeated themselves. Humans saved Valkyrie who had been trying to kill them moments before. They treated wounds, carried the injured, and guided survivors to the escape shuttles. They worked without rest, without complaint, driven by something the Valkyrie had never seen before. Queen Thalvera watched from her throne room as human medics treated her wounded guards. She had not moved since the pulse hit. She could not understand what she was seeing. A human doctor approached her. He was an older man, with gentle hands and tired eyes. "Your Majesty, the ship is going to crash in about 90 minutes. We need to evacuate you." "Why?" the Queen asked. Her voice sounded different now, almost lost. "Because you will die if you stay here. But we are your enemies. We threatened to destroy you. We tried to take your child." The doctor smiled sadly. "Yes, you did, and we are angry about that. But anger does not mean we want you to die. We want you to live. We want you to change. We want you to understand that there is another way to exist in this universe." He offered her his hand. "Please, Your Majesty, let us help you." Thalvera looked at his small, soft human hand. She had lived for 1,000 years. She had conquered dozens of species. She had never once shown mercy to an enemy. And here was this fragile creature, wounded by her warriors, standing in her dying ship, offering to save her life. She did not take his hand, but she stood up and followed him to the evacuation shuttle. The flagship crashed into the moon's surface 2 hours later. It broke apart on impact, creating a crater that would be visible for centuries. but its crew was safe, rescued by the very species they had threatened to destroy. The Velkari survivors were brought aboard the human ship and the remaining functional Velkari vessels. Human doctors treated their injuries. Human engineers helped repair their damaged systems. And throughout it all, the Queen watched in silence, trying to understand the impossible thing she had witnessed. These humans had beaten her. They had destroyed her fleet with a single weapon. They could have left her people to die. But they did not. 3 days passed after the rescue. The Velkari fleet slowly came back to life as their organic systems healed from the pulse. Human engineers helped where they could, sharing knowledge freely with their former enemies. It was a strange time, filled with confusion and unexpected kindness. Captain Crawford recovered in the medical bay. Her ribs were healing, and the swelling around her eye had gone down. She was reading reports when Paul Hartley entered with unexpected news. "The Queen wants to see you," he said. Crawford looked up from her datapad. "Does she want to fight again?" "I do not think so. She specifically asked for a peaceful meeting. No guards, no weapons, just you and her." Crawford considered this for a moment. Then she nodded. "Help me up. I have a queen to visit." The meeting took place in a neutral area, a cargo bay that had been emptied and cleaned. Crawford arrived first, sitting in a simple chair that someone had placed in the center of the room. A few minutes later, Queen Thalvera entered alone. The Queen looked different, smaller somehow. The cold arrogance that had filled her presence before was gone. In its place was something that looked almost like uncertainty. "Captain Crawford," the Queen said, "thank you for meeting with me." "You threatened my crew and tried to start a war," Crawford replied calmly. "But you also asked nicely. So here I am." Thalvera made a sound that might have been a laugh. "You humans are strange. You do not behave the way other species behave. I have conquered many civilizations in my lifetime. I have met thousands of different beings, and I have never seen anything like what you did." "What do you mean?" The Queen moved closer. "You saved us. After everything we did, after every threat we made, you risked your lives to rescue my people. Your medical technician, the young woman with red hair, she was attacked by one of my warriors while saving our larva. He cut her arm badly. And do you know what she did?" "I read the report," Crawford said. "She ordered her companions to give him medical treatment," Thalvera continued. "He attacked her, and she saved his life. Why? What possible reason could she have?" Crawford thought carefully before answering. "Because that is who we are. We believe that every life has value, even the lives of our enemies. We cannot control what others do to us, but we can control what we do in response. We choose mercy." "Mercy," the Queen repeated the word like she was tasting it for the first time. "In my language, there is no word for mercy. The closest translation is weakness that leads to death. In our language, mercy means strength that leads to life," Crawford replied. "We believe the strongest thing a person can do is choose not to harm someone, even when they have every right to." Thalvera was silent for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was quiet. "I am 1,007 years old. I have ruled the Velkari Empire for 800 of those years. In all that time, I believed that power was the only truth. The strong rule, the weak serve or die. There is no other way." She looked directly at Crawford with her multifaceted eyes. "But your species, you are not strong. Your bodies are fragile. Your lives are short. Your technology is primitive compared to ours. By every measure I know, you should be nothing. Insects to be crushed, slaves to be used." "And yet?" Crawford asked. "And yet you defeated me. Not with power, but with something else. Something I do not understand." The Queen's voice cracked slightly. "You made me feel small, not because you hurt me, but because you showed me kindness. I did not know that was possible." Crawford stood up slowly, ignoring the pain in her ribs. She walked toward the Queen, until they were close enough to touch. "It is never too late to learn," she said gently. "It is never too late to change." Queen Thalvera did something then that no Velkhari ruler had done in 50,000 years. She knelt before another being. Her ancient knees touched the floor, and her head bowed low. "I withdraw my claim on the young human," she said formally. "He is free. He belongs to his people." "Thank you," Crawford said. "But I want to offer something else." The Queen looked up. "An alliance. Not the kind where one species rules and another serves. A true partnership. Equals working together." Crawford raised an eyebrow. "Your empire and humanity? That would change everything." "Yes, it would." Thalvera rose to her feet. "I have spent 1,000 years taking from the universe. Perhaps it is time to try giving instead. Your people have shown me that strength does not have to mean cruelty. I want to learn more." She extended one clawed hand toward Crawford. "What do you say, Captain? Will you teach me how to be human?" Crawford looked at the hand. 3 days ago this queen had threatened to kill her entire crew. Now she was asking for friendship. It seemed impossible. And yet, Crawford reached out and took the alien hand in her own. "I think we can learn from each other," she said. The next morning, the Resolute prepared to return to Earth, but it would not travel alone. A fleet of Velkhari ships formed an honor escort around the small human vessel. It was the first time in history that the two species had flown together as allies. Lucas stood at the observation deck, watching the alien ships through the window. He still could not believe everything that had happened. A week ago, he had been a simple engineering ensign. Now he was the reason for the most important diplomatic event in human history. Paul Hartley joined him at the window. The older man said nothing for a while, just stood beside Lucas and watched the stars. "You know," Lucas said finally, "when the Queen wanted me, I was ready to go. I thought my life did not matter compared to everyone else." "And now?" Paul asked. "Now I understand why you fought so hard to keep me. It was not really about me as a person. It was about what it would mean to give me up. If humanity trades lives for safety, we become just like everyone else. We lose what makes us special." Paul smiled. "You are learning, kid." "But I still wonder," Lucas continued, "what if the pulse had not worked? What if we could not beat them? Would you really have let everyone die just to save me?" Paul turned to face him directly. "Yes, without hesitation. Because the moment we start calculating which lives are worth saving and which are not, we have already lost. Some things are more important than survival." "That seems crazy," Lucas admitted. "Maybe it is, but it is the kind of crazy that changes the universe." Paul clapped him on the shoulder. "Come on, the captain wants to see you before we jump to warp." They found Captain Crawford on the bridge. She was still moving carefully because of her injuries, but her eyes were bright and alert. When she saw Lucas, she smiled. "Ensign Grant, I wanted to thank you personally. Your modifications to the warp core saved all of us." Lucas felt his face get warm. "I was just doing my job, Captain." "No, you did much more than that. You showed courage under impossible pressure. You did not give up, even when everything seemed lost." Crawford's expression became serious. "The Queen asked about you, by the way. She wanted to know who you were." "What did you tell her?" "I told her you are claimed." Crawford smiled again. "You belong to humanity. You belong to this crew. You are one of us, Lucas. Never forget that." The ship jumped to warp speed, carrying its crew toward home. Behind them, the Velkhari fleet followed, beginning a journey that would change both species forever. And in the vast darkness of space, a new story was being written. A story about humans who refused to abandon their own. A story about enemies who became friends. A story about mercy and courage and the strange power of kindness. The alien queen had demanded the youngest human, and humanity had answered with three simple words that echoed through the galaxy. He is claimed.